What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. Little change up on the podcast today. We are in the midst of NFL season, just got done with week 14. However, the NCAA has released their bracket for the very first college football playoff with 12 teams. And if you listen to the pod, you know that about this time every year, we'll do a bowl season podcast for all of the NCAA bowls. However, college football has decided that only certain games matter and the rest of the bowls do not anymore. So we are going to take a look at the bracket. We're going to break it down. We're going to talk about the teams that are involved, who was left out, who should have been included, because there's someone that I think got screwed over, and then go through some of our picks for the favorite games of the first round, second round, who needs to win the most, all of those great things, everything you need to know about the bracket leading up to the very first 12-team college football playoff. And then at the end of the podcast, we will wrap up by doing Scolds and Bolds from week 14 of the NFL, America's favorite segment, and our gambling picks for next week. Had another really good gambling week this week. Thank you, Jamar Chase. So I had a whole rant written down. I was ready to go off on Red Sox ownership today after watching Juan Soto sign with the Mets and Max Fried sign with the New York Skankies, as well as losing out on Blake Snell. But then the Red Sox make a trade for Garrett Crochet, the pitcher from the Chicago White Sox. They trade Kyle Teel, who's one of the Red Sox big four prospects, along with other minor prospects who are not as much of a big deal to me as the remaining big three in our farm system, who, if you don't know, the Red Sox have three of the top 10 prospects still in all of baseball, guys that we think are going to be very, very good, who I do not want to see traded. But Kyle Teel gets traded for Garrett Crochet. I think overall a really good deal for the Red Sox, something that I'm excited about. But I do want to say that ownership still needs to step up and put their money where their mouth is. And this was really the focus of my rant, is that you are the goddamn Boston Red Sox. You're one of the most profitable teams in the league. I think they're fourth in revenue, and you are a big market team, and it is time to act like it. Ownership has done nothing to improve this team so far this offseason. They added a domestic abuser for $10 million as a relief pitcher in Aroldis Chapman, who, while he's still a decent relief pitcher, I cannot get excited for someone with his history to be joining my team. And then Craig Breslow goes out and makes the trade for Garrett Crochet. So, like I said, super excited to add Crochet, but it's a lot easier to add guys in free agency if you're willing to just spend the money to add those guys. And I understand that the Red Sox don't want to overpay free agents, but that is the market in free agency. You have to overpay these guys to bring them in. Like, yeah, should the Yankees have signed Max Fried to an 8-year deal with his injury history? Absolutely not. But you're not getting guys of that caliber unless you're willing to go that far. Like, Juan Soto is not worth $765 million over 15 years or whatever insane amount he signed for, but he's going to get that in the free agency market because people are willing to give it to him. And if you're not, then you are swimming in the little kids pool and you are not playing with the Sharks where you need to be because you're the goddamn Boston Red Sox. I give ownership no credit for, quote unquote, being in on Juan Soto. They fell $65 million short of what the final bid was. They were also nowhere close on Max Fried when he signed with the Skankies. It's great to be in all these rumors and be interested and be the team, but if you're nowhere close in the bidding, then you're not making a serious effort. And if you're not making a serious effort, you're doing a disservice to the fans who are loyal to this team and have been following you guys forever, supporting this team and helping you make all this money you make from gate revenue and TV deals and merchandise and all this other bullshit. It's been years since the Red Sox went out and signed a marquee free agent. And every offseason now, ownership is saying, hey, it's pedal to the metal. It's time to go. We're ready to win. We're investing this offseason. And you have not done shit. Offering to pay Juan Soto $700 million is nothing. You get zero credit until that money is spent and elite players are in Red Sox uniforms this offseason. The next big domino to fall is Corbin Burnes. And there's a lot of rumors that, the Red Sox are in on him, but they're a little hesitant because they don't want to pay him that much. If you don't want to pay him that much, don't make a fucking offer, because he's an elite free agent pitcher, and he is going to command probably the third largest pitching contract of all time. And if you're not willing to pay that, don't even bother fucking calling him and being in all these rumors. because all you're doing is getting fans' hopes up and then dashing them when you inevitably come up short because you're not willing to open your wallet because John Henry wants to save money to buy the goddamn Pittsburgh Penguins or a second soccer team that nobody gives a shit about in Spain. This is your team. This is your baseball team, the Boston Red Sox. And you have fans like me who fucking care about this a lot. And you have no desire to compete because you want to save your money for other investments. And I get it. He's a businessman. He's trying to make money. And this is a cash cow that he's just cashing in on and using that money for other things. But holy crap, man, you cannot keep coming out and saying, yeah, we're really going to spend this offseason. We're really committed to making this team a contender. And then pull this bullshit, these rug pulls over and over again, and work with these media lackeys who will do anything you say to make it sound like you made a serious effort. Because so far you haven't. You haven't made a serious effort on a single free agent. And I don't care that you called Juan Soto and met with his people and blah, blah, blah. If you were not willing to put in the extra $4.3 million a year to get him, you are not taking this seriously. Because that's what the difference was with Juan Soto signing with the Mets and the Red Sox. And would Steve Cohen, the owner of the Mets, have gone higher for Juan Soto? Totally possible. But we came $65 million short, which is a lot of money, but over 15 years, it's $4.3 million average annual value. You lost Juan Soto over $4.3 million a year. So if you weren't willing to put in that extra 65 million because they were willing to go to 700 for 15, what's the difference between 700 and 765? When you're up above a certain number, it doesn't fucking matter anymore. You get absolutely zero credit from me for quote unquote going after Juan Soto because I don't believe you took it seriously. I don't think you took Blake Snell seriously. I don't think that you took Max Fried seriously or Willy Adames. And what you're willing to do is trade key pieces of your farm system like Kyle Teal to go get somebody who's cost controlled, like Garrett Crochet. He's got another year. They want to see how he pitches basically in Boston before they do an extension. So you're willing to go get cheap pieces. You're willing to sell off the future to make it look like we're going to be competitive next year, but you're not willing to put your goddamn money where your mouth is. And if we're going to compete, which we better start making the playoffs and competing if we're trading away guys like Kyle Teal, you're going to have to spend some money. I want Corbin Burns in a Red Sox uniform. I don't care if it's 7 years for $290 million. I don't care if it's 8 years for $350 million. Put him in a goddamn Red Sox uniform. I want Teoscar Hernandez in a Red Sox uniform. You've been flirting with him for years. Didn't want to sign him last year when he was cheap. Sign him now. I don't care what the expense is. I don't care how much money John Henry has to spend. If you don't put your money where your mouth is, you are going to be a pariah in Boston and you fucking deserve to get booed. If you don't sign anybody and just march out Garrett Crochet at Fenway Days or whatever stupid event you have coming up to meet and greet with the fans, I hope they boo your ass. And my message to Red Sox fans is that nothing with this team is going to change until we make it change. And the only way we're going to make it change, short of making John Henry the next CEO to get shot in the streets of New York, is with our money. Do not buy Red Sox merchandise until they spend money on this team. Do not watch the Red Sox on NESN or any other channel until they spend money on this team. Do not go to Fenway until they spend money on this team. Why are you spending your money on this team when the fucker that owns it isn't? Put your money where your mouth is, John Henry. Let's see Corbin Burns in a Red Sox uniform. And if you're not going to put your money where your mouth is, then shut your goddamn mouth and don't talk about this team anymore. So I said I wasn't going to go off, but you guys got my rant anyway. You could tell I'm still pissed off. The Garrett Crochet thing curbed my enthusiasm a little bit, I guess, because I am excited about that trade. But like I said, man, if significant money is not spent on this team and they come out of the offseason and be like, look, we traded for someone and we went after guys, we just couldn't close the deal, unacceptable. And the fans need to show them that there are consequences for that. With that said, I promise the rest of this podcast is going to be fun. It's not going to be me complaining. Matt and I are going to talk about the college football playoff. Reminder, you can reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Let us know who you think is going to win the college football playoff and what you think about the brackets. You will get me emailing you back to have a conversation, not spam and newsletters and all that kind of bullshit. So hit us up. Let's go grab Matt and let's talk college football. Let's go. All right, Matt is here. We're fresh off of week 14 of the NFL season, but not what we're really talking about today until the end. I mentioned in the opening that there was going to be a little change up, a little college football action on the podcast.
Yep.
Now that we have a bracket for the first ever 12-team college football playoff. But first, Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. Sounds like not as good as Maddie pooping in that potty.
Bro was hype. Hype. My son gets we have like the little gift basket for him when he poops on the potty because he just potty trained recently, so he still gets the little gift basket. And there's like Oreos, Sour Patch Kids, and Unreal M&Ms. They're like the dye-free M&Ms.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I want a gift basket every time I poop. Where's my gift basket?
Well, here's a little secret for you, man. You can buy yourself your own gift basket.
Yeah, but it's like it's not as fun.
You and Marley have to like agree to buy each other your own gift baskets.
Buy each other poop gift baskets. Wonderful. I wonder what's going to be in mine. Do you know on TikTok, there's a guy who recorded a poop song for every single conceivable name? And I know you don't have TikTok, but anybody who has TikTok, if you go on TikTok and search your name and then the word poop, the first thing that pops up is this guy singing a poop song with your name in it.
I did not know that.
Yeah, you might want to download TikTok just to figure that out. But like people with like rare names have been like, I found my name. This guy recorded thousands of hours of poop songs. Amazing. It's amazing what people will do. Didn't expect the podcast to start off that way. The way I did expect the podcast to start off is, like I said, the first ever 12-team college football playoff bracket has dropped. The games start December 20th, which is a week from Friday. So this comes out on the 12th. Going to be about 8 days out from the first games.
Mm-hmm.
But wanted to talk about this like while the bracket is fresh. So the first round is Indiana at Notre Dame, SMU at Penn State, Clemson at Texas, and Tennessee at Ohio State, Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, and Arizona State get the byes. Matt, my first thought when looking at this bracket is that this is in no way what the NCAA intended when they instituted the 12-team playoff. I was like, this is not what they pictured.
You know what really fucked them on this?
Conference realignment.
Yeah. Yep. Because we had historically plenty of like powerhouse programs that had kind of fallen off a little bit, but like would play in a weaker, Power 5 conference and, just get automatic bids because they won it, right? And when everything got realigned, well, okay, now you got like Texas going up against a lot stiffer competition.
I think in a lot of ways, it made the regular season better. The conference realignment did, where, we saw Texas versus Georgia and Oregon versus Ohio State. We had some like really fun regular season games we wouldn't have normally gotten.
Yeah.
But for the purposes of this playoff, so anybody who doesn't know how the seeding works, and it turned out on Sunday where they were doing the selection show that there were a lot of people who had no idea how the seeding works. And I'm not talking about fans. I'm talking about sports writers, like people who get paid to write about it, people who get paid to do podcast about it. I was reading this whole article on The Score last week on like Sunday morning that was saying like, Texas might be in danger of not getting a first round bye now. Like, They lost the SEC. They don't get a first round bye.
Yeah.
The 4 first round byes go to the 4 highest ranked conference champions. And so you get Oregon, who won the Big Ten, Georgia, who won the
Hmm.
SEC. Boise State is the next highest ranked conference champion because what realignment did is it means that the Big Ten gets one bye, the SEC gets one bye,
Hmm.
and then the other 2 byes are going to 2 of 3 of either the ACC, which is bad,
Yep.
the completely depleted Big 12, where their conference championship game was Iowa State versus Arizona State. And it's like, holy crap, one of these teams is getting not only a guaranteed spot in the college football playoff, but a first round bye. Or so it's ACC, depleted Big 12, or like we're seeing with Boise State, a group of 5 team who gets ranked high enough and wins their conference. And I just, this is in no way what they intended. I think I was looking back at last year's playoff and thinking that the 4 byes would have been Michigan, Alabama, Texas, and Washington.
Hmm.
And Georgia would have had a home game. Like I think
Yep.
Oregon probably would have had a home game. Oklahoma, like some of these other bigger schools would have had the
Yeah.
home games. And then you would have 4 big name programs getting the byes. So my kind of my first big takeaway from looking at this is that I guarantee you they are going to change how they do the seeding next year. And it's going to go from the 4 highest ranked conference champions get byes to all the conference champions get guaranteed playoff spots, but the byes go to the 4 highest ranked teams, whoever the committee decides should get
Yeah.
them. And I looked at what that looks like. This year, the byes would have been Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and Penn State. You would have had Clemson at Notre Dame, Arizona State at Ohio State, SMU at Tennessee, and Boise State at Indiana. But I think it makes a lot of sense for the NCAA and the College Football Playoff Committee to basically guarantee that the bigger name programs are going to be there in the second round,
Hmm.
because the absolute nightmare scenario for them right now is like Indiana knocks off Notre Dame, SMU knocks off Penn State, and Clemson knocks off Texas. And then in the next round, we're watching like Arizona State versus Clemson, Boise versus SMU, and Georgia versus Indiana. And the ratings are like not that great, which for me, I'm a sicko. I'm going to watch all the games no matter who's playing.
Right.
But I'm talking about drawing in casual fans. You want like, even if Texas beats Clemson, you're going to have Texas versus Arizona State.
Hmm.
It's not what you wanted for the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, a sponsored bowl game. Because like the first round is not sponsored. It's like just college football playoff games. But you definitely didn't want Texas versus Arizona State and SMU versus Boise State in the second round. That was not the intention
Yeah. I
here.
mean, when they announced that the 12 team playoff, like there was never a point in time where I thought Arizona State would be in the 12 team playoff, let alone get the first round bye.
Yeah. With a coach who's the same age as we are,
Yeah.
which is insane to me. But
Well, we're failures. It's fine.
yeah, I mean, if we were trying to become head coaches, yeah, probably. But yeah, so that was my first thought looking at this is just like, it's not what they intended. I think what they intended was they're like, okay, what we're going to do is like give all the really big name teams a chance to be here. So they probably intended like, okay, we're going to have like Michigan and Alabama,
Yeah.
Oklahoma, like some of these other guys will be in here. And then we can just shut everybody up by making a team like Boise State the 12 seed and they get smashed by the 5 seed every year and it's no big deal. And at least like the group of 5 teams now get a chance and
They
they
don't
can't complain
know the
anymore.
magic of Ashton Jonty, though.
And that's the problem is that Boise was so good this year that they are ranked like what 9 or 10 or something like that.
Yeah.
And there were no other conference champions ranked high enough to dethrone them from grabbing not only a first round bye, but the 3 seed. I definitely think that the NCAA did not intend for a group of five team to have a 3 seed in this tournament. And it may be the last time that we see this, but I'll give credit to Boise though, is that like they did everything that the NCAA has been telling them they have to do for years to get included in a
Yeah.
championship game or a playoff. Like they scheduled Oregon out of conference, which is the hardest non-conference game you could possibly schedule. And they only lost that game by 37-34. And then they dominated their conference all season. And it's like, okay, what there shouldn't be anything else you have to see from this team to
Yeah.
tell you that they should be included in this. I think the NCAA meant to include them as like a 12 or 11 seed, not
Yeah.
the 3 seed, which is hysterical.
But I mean that we talked about it before the season even started with the conference realignment. You're not going to see a bunch of undefeated teams anymore. You're just not because they have to play each other. And that that is what opens the door for this.
Yeah, I mean that we did talk about that where we're saying like this tournament is going to be filled out by a lot of teams that have 1 or 2 losses. I thought someone with like 3 losses, like I my biggest complaint about expansion was that someone like Alabama or Georgia was probably going to be able to lose 3 games and still make this tournament. And we came damn close to seeing it because Alabama was very like if SMU beats Clemson, Alabama's in this tournament
Yeah.
with 3 losses. If Georgia loses to Texas in the SEC championship, Georgia is in this tournament with 3 losses. We almost saw it. We came damn close, and I honestly like we'll get into this in a little bit, but I think we should have seen it. I think Alabama belongs in this tournament. Uh, and the team that I would take out of it, I think, is not the team that everybody is expecting because the argument was between SMU and Alabama, and that is not the team that I think does not belong here. So my first big takeaway was that this is not what the NCAA intended, and that it'll change next season, I bet. My second big takeaway is that it doesn't matter who you play. It only matters that you win.
Mhm.
And the team that,
If you're a big enough school.
well, the team that I think doesn't belong in this tournament is Indiana.
Right. But like if like okay, Western goes undefeated. They're not getting in this.
Yeah. I mean, if you're like a Power Five school,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying. Like,
Yes. Right.
so
But those are still relatively big universities.
yeah, but Indiana being here over Alabama and South Carolina, I think that is the true debate that everybody should have been having, not should
Mhm.
SMU be here or not. Indiana's strength of schedule was 67 this year. Indiana has 1 win over a team that is above 500 this season. I'm not talking ranked teams. I'm not talking like top 25 wins at the time. They have 1 win over a team that has a record of better than 500 this season, and that is their win against the Michigan Wolverines, who were not very good this year. And
They were good when they needed to.
yeah, Indiana did everything that you're not supposed to do. Their out of conference schedule was Florida International, Western Illinois, Charlotte, which are all under 500 teams that don't even play in like Power Five conferences. They pretty much ran the slate in the Big Ten and played one ranked team this entire season in Ohio State and got absolutely schmeckledorfed. They lost 38-15. And honestly, if you watch the game, it didn't even look that close. And yet they're here as a 10 seed. I also look at like Penn State and Texas and think that they're both overseeded in this tournament. Penn State strength of schedule was 30th. They have 1 win against a ranked team against Illinois. Texas's strength of schedule was 20th, but they have no wins against ranked teams. They played 2 top 25 games and they lost to Georgia both times. And yet they're the 5 seed. Alabama, on the other hand, played the 18th strength of schedule, and they have 3 wins against ranked teams, including SEC champion Georgia. So I don't know, man. I look at it and I'm like, I know everybody was debating SMU, and they're like, well, you can't take SMU out for losing their conference championship because then teams are going to be like, well, we're better off if we just don't play the conference championship. And I get that, but I think what should have happened here is that Indiana should have been out and Alabama should have been in. And it's coming from someone who doesn't like to see the traditional college football powers win all the time. But if you gave me the blind resume and you're like, this team's 9-3, they played a way harder schedule and beat better teams, I would be like, that's the team I think should be in.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would agree with that.
It's not even like you only have one win against a ranked team or something like that. It's like you have one win against a team that was over 500 this season.
Yeah.
You played 4-8 Florida International, 4-8 Western Illinois, and 4-8 Charlotte out of conference.
I wonder too if there was an element of like they're not they haven't seen the top 10 look like this really ever before. And there was kind of just a point of like, what do we even do? Like, like they're not used to seeing so many teams with multiple losses up here in the polls.
And
Not
that,
that like that should take away any ability to have critical thinking skills, but I also don't have any trust that the NCAA actually has those when it doesn't regard to money.
yeah.
So there's three one-loss teams.
Yeah. So there's Oregon is undefeated. We got Notre Dame is 11-1. Indiana's 11-1. Boise State was 12-1. So you got four teams. Well, Army's 11-1, but they're not in this. So
Yeah.
you had four teams that have one or fewer losses, but then everybody else is two losses. But this is the thing with the losses, though, is that you have Georgia, Texas, and Penn State who all have two losses. They're ahead of one loss Notre Dame. They're all ahead of one loss Indiana. So like
Hmm.
I do think that there's just something broken in the brains of people who vote for this stuff that's like, okay, I can't put a team with three losses over a team that only has one loss. And that's what I'm saying is like if I next year, if I was a power five school, I'd be like, I'm not playing anybody I don't have to play. Like fuck that. And I know schedules are set. I
Yeah.
know people can't really do
Yeah.
that, but I'd be if I could set my
But
schedule,
like
I'd be like,
years in advance.
yeah, I'd be like, I'm not playing anybody. Why do I have to play anybody if I can get in at 11-1, especially if I was playing in like the Big Ten or the SEC? And I'm like, look,
Yeah.
my conference schedule is already hard enough. I don't need this bullshit.
Yeah. It's the money. The money will make it keep happening.
Yeah. Do
The schools get money out of that. So,
schools not have enough money, Matt?
oh,
How much
oh,
money do we need?
they're getting plenty of money from the students. Uh,
College
that, but
football
they
and
but they want more.
the quest for more money. They I thought it was interesting how they seeded it too, because it sounded like they were trying to avoid rematches or interconference games in round one.
Yeah.
So like they put Ohio State and Tennessee together to make sure Ohio State didn't play Indiana.
Yeah.
They didn't want Indiana playing Penn State. They like, yeah. So you got SEC versus Big Ten, SEC versus ACC, like all that stuff. There's no like Big Ten on Big Ten in the first round, at
Hmm.
least. We could see Ohio State versus Oregon in the second round. But that would pretty much be the only like interconference matchup, at least until we would get to the quarterfinals or the
Yeah.
semifinals. So, uh, any other big takeaways from looking at this bracket? Anything you learned?
I mean, I feel like you kind of hit the nail on the head. Um, I mean, it's just like we said, like it's the polar opposite of what they were going for when they created this. I don't necessarily know that these are the 12 best teams. And I mean that's always to kind of be expected with stuff like this. I think we both agreed that there were many times we didn't get the best four teams in the 14 playoffs. So, um,
But do we have the best four teams in the 12 team playoff? This is the I think this was always the thing is like, and I had said this when we talked about expansion before too, is that like it doesn't matter how many teams you include in the tournament.
Yeah,
Whoever is the third team or the fifth team, or in this case, the 13th team, is going to throw a bitch fit.
yeah.
And in this case, it's SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey is demanding transparency in the selection process because Alabama got left out. Do you know Greg Sankey's been petitioning the NCAA to have 4 guaranteed SEC spots in this tournament? He wants the top 4 SEC teams to be guaranteed entry into the college football playoff. Yeah, that's a third of the teams. And
Yeah,
he
no.
he might not be wrong because Alabama should have been in this.
Yeah, but I will say that one thing in favor of the expansion is like, yeah, sure, like you're always not necessarily going to get the best whatever number of spots you create, right? But the larger you create that bracket, the more likelihood is that at the end you're going to have the best teams in there.
Yeah.
So,
I think one important thing here too is like if you look at what a 4-team playoff would have looked like this year, it would have been, I mean, rankings wise, Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and Penn State. For a 4-team playoff this year, we would have had a massive debate like no other
yeah,
because Texas and Penn State just lost to Oregon and Georgia in their championship games. And
yeah,
then you have like Notre Dame is 11-1 sitting there. Boise State, I think, would have an argument to be included. Like it would have been a shit show if we only had 4 teams. And then like Texas would have made it, and they would have been like, "Well, we had to pick the best 4 teams," and blah blah. So, I mean, I know Alabama has a gripe, and I'm sure there's varying degrees of legitimacy to that gripe, but I think overall this is pretty right, and I think that we'll have like a good degree of confidence that the best team won the championship this year.
yeah, yeah.
But
I would agree.
can I tell you how I would fix all of this? I would
Go
fix
for it.
it's 2 easy, I think 2 really easy things that would fix the entire college football system. And my biggest thing, and my dad knows exactly what's coming here. I wouldn't rank the teams until at least week 6. My thing, I wouldn't rank them until the college football playoff rankings come out. Like no more AP poll. I think preseason rankings disproportionately affect the rankings of these teams, even all the way at the end of the season. And I think a good example of this is that Texas went on the road to Ann Arbor in week 2 and destroyed Michigan. Michigan was number 10 at the time, and Texas was like in the top 5. And then Texas went up to number 1 after that. And everybody's like, whoa, what an awesome win. They just beat number 10 on the road, the defending national champions, blah, blah, blah. Turns out that Michigan was not very good this year. And I wasn't picking
Hey,
Michigan.
hey, don't tell that to Ohio State.
Well, I think that's more ammo for you guys in Ohio
Yeah,
State is
I
that
know.
even in a down year, Ohio State has a Michigan
They're still
problem.
crying about that one,
Yeah, they'll be crying about that for a while. But
at least for another year.
yeah, you shoot yourselves in the foot 50 times in a game. Oh my God. And shock Pikachu face when you lose.
Yeah,
Like, do you think was
maybe
going to
you're
happen?
just not very good.
But that win over Michigan early in the season, like looking back at it now, is not as impressive as it was at the time.
Yeah,
But Texas went up to number 1 after that, and people were like, watch out, Texas is a legitimate national championship contender. They're a real threat. And they just kind of stayed super high. So, like, even after they lost to Georgia the first time, it was like, well, we can't knock them down too far. They're really good. And then they lose to Georgia again. And it's like, okay, well, we're just going to put them at 4 and give them the top seed in this playoff, even though they haven't really beaten anybody this season because they have no wins over top 25 teams looking at the rankings right now. Like, if we would have just waited on ranking these teams until like week 6, 7, like after we kind of knew Michigan sucked. No offense. I'm not picking on Michigan to pick on you. This was the first one that came to mind.
well, it's like what, fourth or fifth on my allegiances.
I know. I know, but
It just in college football.
I was just thinking about this though, because like I was thinking about it early in the season where I was like, man, if Michigan's not that good this year, this win is not as impressive as
Yeah,
people are saying it is right now. And I feel like the Longhorns get like a ton of credit, even though they've essentially not done anything this year.
yeah,
You know, they beat Oklahoma, who was ranked at the time. Same situation. Oklahoma falls off a cliff and finishes like 6-6. They beat Vanderbilt by 3. They beat
hmm
Arkansas by 10. They beat Texas A&M
yeah,
17-7. Like they haven't done anything this season. And they're like, here's the number one non-buy seed. Just hand it to them because we think that we've thought since before the season that you were going to be good this year.
yeah.
So
I think the problem from the stance of media would be if you don't do preseason rankings and then like rankings every week from the start, right? Then like they'll have to actually put in work and find some sort of other way to come up with content other than, oh, who's number one? Like, what's the
yeah,
narrative based on the rankings?
well,
Don't think it makes any sense to rank teams that haven't played games yet. Uh, we've kind of been on that boat for a while now.
yeah,
Um, and I was even thinking when we were just discussing the bracket, like when you pick those 12 teams, okay, yeah, you've got to like parse out the four that are going to get the bye, but outside of that, like we don't even need to attach numbers to them because we don't want to necessarily do first round like conference matchups, right? Well, you avoid the kerfuffle of like messing around with the rankings if you just don't put numbers on it.
yeah. I think that's the thing is like they put these numbers on it early in the season because they're like, well, how are people going to know what games to watch if they don't know who's ranked where? And it's like, I don't think that you needed to tell people to watch Texas at Michigan.
Yeah,
I don't think we needed to tell people like, hey, Clemson and Georgia are playing on Saturday. That's probably a big game. It's on at 8 o'clock on Saturday night. You should watch that. I don't
yeah,
think people are that stupid. I mean,
eh,
maybe teams like SMU who were a lot better than expected this season. Like people like to see them like bumping up the
yeah,
polls and stuff. But like so start in week 6.
yeah. But
Don't you
no
don't need to
casual fan is going to tune in to SMU early in the year, pretty much no matter what, unless you're like ranking them top five right off the bat, which AP is never going to do that.
Yeah. But I think like sports media could get their jollies still off of being like, here's who I think should be number one right now. And they'd all like debate it all the way up until week 6. And then there would be like the first unveiling of like, okay, we've played half of the season, 6 games,
Yeah,
half the regular season. Here are who the top teams are from what we've seen on the field. Not
yeah,
like, I think Texas is going to be good this year. So they're number 2. And then like they're still number 3 all the way this late in the season, even though they've essentially done nothing. So
yeah,
uh my part 2 fix for this is you'll like this one. Eliminate the committee altogether and go back to the BCS. I don't think the problem with the BCS was the rankings necessarily. I think it was that whoever the BCS said was the 2 best teams just went and played in the championship game, and that was it. They're
yeah.
just like BCS championship,
Because it
boom.
was two teams, there was literally no room for error.
Yeah. And it was the same thing. There would always be a third team that was complaining and the whole
Yeah,
thing. But I think keep the 12-team playoff, but let the
yeah,
BCS tell us who should be in it. So I looked at what that would look like this year and following all the same rules. So conference champions get the buys, like the 4 highest rated conference champions, blah, blah, blah.
mhm,
Would have been Oregon, Georgia, Boise State, and Arizona State. So that would have stayed the same. Our first round matchups would have been Clemson at Notre Dame, Alabama at Texas, Indiana at Ohio State, and Tennessee at Penn State. So it does take out SMU and put Alabama in there.
mhm.
And it shifts the seeding a little bit where Notre Dame now is getting the 5 seed. Clemson is still 12. And then Bama's getting in at the 11 and playing Texas. So I I understand from the committee perspective, they're like, well, we can't take SMU out of the tournament because they lost their conference championship game. Because then it's like, oh, well, they just would have been better off if they didn't go to the conference championship game in the first place. So let the computers do that for you. And they're like, well, the computers told us Bama has to be here. So here's Bama. So I find myself agreeing more with the BCS with the expanded field than I do like just having a room full of people just be like, we don't really want to make Texas play Alabama in the first round, so Texas gets the 5 seed. Uh, Speaking of round one, what is your what's your favorite game? Which game are you looking forward to the most?
Probably gonna be the Tennessee Ohio State game. Between that and the Clemson Texas game for me, but I just I'm already resigned to the fact that a Drew Aller led team is playing one playoff game. Uh
A Drew Aller and James Franklin led
yeah,
team. Yeah, I agree. I think the best game is Ohio State versus
yeah.
Tennessee, which
And
is like it's the 8-9, so theoretically
yeah.
it's supposed to be the closest matchup.
Hmm.
Um Clemson, the only my thing with Clemson is like I feel like the committee was just like, God, we hate Clemson so much. They're literally only here because they have to be, which was a little surprising to me. I thought before the ranking show that they would find a way to put Clemson as that fourth bye because of the brand name and
Yeah.
do what they did to Clemson to Arizona State and just be like, oh God, we have to put these guys in here. So here they are at 12. Um, but Cade Klubnik, the quarterback for Clemson, going back to
Hmm.
play against Texas, where he's from. He's from Austin,
Yeah.
Texas. That's fun. But yeah, Ohio State, Tennessee, I think is the big game to watch in the first round. And I also like, I look at Oregon and I'm like, this bracket setup really screwed Oregon as well. Because they're going to get Tennessee or Ohio State in the second round, which is like gonna, I mean, I don't know, maybe Texas, but like, I think looking at all the round one teams, Tennessee is probably the team I want to play least in round two if I'm a team that has a bye because the defense is absolutely nasty. They're top 10 in every
Yeah.
metric in the country, and they have a D line that just like wrecks games. So if they do beat Ohio State in Ohio State, which I don't, I could see it going one of two ways where one, Ohio State is just completely dead after that Michigan game
Yeah.
and Tennessee annihilates them, or like we look at it and we're like, okay, Ohio State barely lost to Oregon this season and they just have a Michigan problem, but they're not playing Michigan and now they're going to destroy Tennessee to like get revenge.
Do they just have a Michigan problem or do they have a Ryan Day problem?
I think we're going to find that out. Do you
I
uh,
I think we've found that out every year that he's coached.
yeah, but
But
like they lost to Michigan in the game a couple years ago and then went into the college football playoff and lost to Georgia like 42-41 and should have won that game. That dude like missed that field goal at the end. And they're just like a hell of a talented team. So I'm like, I think like, well, I don't know. I'll ask you this. Do you think that Ohio State needs to win their round one game the most
absolutely. Like,
out of any team playing in round one? Do you think it's the most important for them to win their game?
yes.
I think someone else, but I want to talk about Ohio State real quick. I How far do they have to go in this tournament for Ryan Day not to get fired?
That I'm not entirely sure on. I know that like they have to win one game. If it's one and done, then like yeah, I can't imagine that they're gonna continue to roll with him. Especially it's not just the fact that they like lost to Michigan and have lost to them several years in a row, but what happened after the game, uh the fact that like pretty much everyone on both coaching staffs, except for Ryan Day, was trying to shut that shit down. as he just stood there like a deer in the headlights. Like, it's just such a bad look. And you compound that with having the Michigan problem and then not getting it done in the postseason. Like, yeah, I mean, that's a high profile job. It's not like they're gonna have a hard time getting someone that's like a hot commodity to come in as a replacement.
Yeah. Yeah, I look at this game and I my take on it is that Tennessee is not a good matchup for Ohio State. I think like Ohio State might be more talented overall, but Tennessee does a lot of the same things that Michigan does
Hmm.
well, and they're probably better at it than Michigan is this season. Like their running back Dylan Sampson ran for almost 1,500 yards and 22 touchdowns this season. Like
Hmm.
they can play smash mouth, and their defensive line is absolutely disgusting. And
Yeah.
while James Pierce has kind of fallen off draft boards for the NFL recently, like he is he's a nasty man and he can absolutely wreck the game. So this is not the matchup I would have wanted if I was Ohio State, especially because all the other lower seeds are like Indiana and SMU and Clemson. It's like I would have infinitely rather played any of those teams than Tennessee. And I like Tennessee plus 7.5 in that game. I think that's way too big for what's about to happen there.
Yeah, no. I mean, as someone who doesn't ever expect Ryan Day to come up big in a big game, um, expecting them to come out with more than a touchdown difference, like I- that's being extremely generous.
Yeah. So the only school I think needs to win their round one game more than Ohio State is Penn State. James Franklin is 3-17 in his career against the top 10. And every single year, Penn State goes 10-2 and they lose to like Michigan and Ohio State.
Hmm.
And this year they didn't play Michigan, so they lose to Oregon. Like, and it's super Penn State. They're like 11-2. The two losses are to the
Uh,
two good teams they played. So
they are consistent,
they
and that
are.
is the only thing I appreciate about them.
Well, and so now you have a home playoff game. And I think you could like easily make an argument that these four playoff games are the most important home games that these schools have ever played. Because it's literally for the like it's in the national championship tournament at your place. You have never played a more important home game than this,
Yeah.
especially not in Happy Valley. And honestly, like I know that SMU had a great season, but they're probably one of the weaker teams in this tournament. So if you can't take care of business against SMU at home in the most important home game in your school's history,
And you're
th-
Penn State.
this could very easily be it for James Franklin at
I
Penn State.
I I think that uh if there were standards that were set for greatness, then yes, but everything that we have seen from Penn State for quite a long time now tells us that yeah, they're happy just getting to double digit wins and then nothing more.
Yeah.
Like
Well, I was listening to a podcast with Todd McShay before the college football season started, and I actually like I enjoy Todd McShay way more as a college football analyst than I do as a draft analyst. And he has a podcast on the Ringer now that's actually pretty good because he talks
mhm.
about college football. He doesn't really talk about the draft as much. Um, but before the season, they were asking him, they're like, "Hey, so like, who's going to benefit the most from the 12-team playoff?" And he's like, "I don't think it is the Georgias and the Alabamas." He's like, "I think it's the teams like Penn State who their program is not going to get any better. They're going to be the same program they always were, but they're going to be perceived as having taken a step forward because they're going to be in the playoff every year because they're just going to go 10-2, 11-2, and playing playoff games. He so hit the nail on the head because everything we saw out of this year's Penn State team is everything that we've seen out of every Penn State team that we've ever watched since we were children.
Yeah.
It's been 30 years of watching the same Penn State team, and yet they're hosting a playoff game
Yeah.
at Happy Valley. And if they can't win it, I think it's going to be an absolute shit show. I mean, like, I know with Ohio State, it's higher profile with
Yeah.
Ryan Day, but like Ohio State fires Ryan Day, they have people like banging down the door to be their next head coach.
Right. Yeah.
Penn State fires James Franklin. It's like, okay, so where do they go
I,
from here?
I just we I don't see him getting fired after this when we haven't really heard anything about him necessarily even being on the hot seat.
That's fair.
So I
That's
I
fair.
just I
Maybe it's
don't.
just my perception that they should fire. Like they
Oh
should have
yeah,
fired him
no.
years ago.
We've been talking about that for years. Like he should have been gone years ago.
They're in college football 25, the video game, when you're the coach, you sign a contract that says like you have to win this many games to keep your job safe. And I feel like his is 10 games and he just wins 10 games every year. So they're like, well, he hit the
All
thing.
right. All right. We hit 10. We're packing it in, guys.
They're like, wait, we get another home playoff game? That's awesome. And then they lose it. And they're like, well, we got it. The next playoff game wouldn't have been at home anyway. So who cares? Um, Last thing on the bracket, and then we'll talk a little NFL. Which potential round two game do you want to see the most?
I'm gonna go with Texas, Arizona State. Like you said, like Ohio State is definitely the more talented team as opposed to Tennessee. I don't think either of them hold up against Oregon. Um,
I think
I
that's by far going to be the most hyped second round game.
it will
Is
be,
whoever plays Oregon.
but I just I don't know. I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
You know. I'll watch whatever game Boise State is playing because Ashton Johnty, but like
Yeah.
I Penn State and SMU aren't going to excite me in any way. Uh, and I don't love Indiana or Notre Dame's chances against Georgia. So
No. No. Actually the one I'm looking forward to the most is Boise State versus uh, I'm kind of assuming it's going to be Penn State because I'm like, okay, you have a good defense. You kind of have to win this game. But I'm looking at it more, put it like kind of transitioning to the NFL here is like, I I love Ashton Janti or
yeah,
Ginty or however you say his name. I'm super excited for him at the next level. And I want to watch him go up against more like really high caliber defenses so that I can do my draft analysis on him.
yeah.
So, and like say what you will about Penn State, but they do have a good defense. And so watching him against that defense, I think would be really interesting to me. Or if it's
Yeah.
SMU versus Boise State, I'm going to be watching it being like, holy shit, the semifinal is going to have either Boise State or SMU in it. And it's a thing of absolute beauty. I'll be so happy about that. But yeah, I mean, one of the three between Boise State, SMU, and Penn State is going to the semifinal.
Yeah.
That's how this fell. Um, any lean on who wins this thing? Part of me is like, this is going to be too chaotic to predict, and the other part of me is like, Oregon is the most complete team in the country. And like,
Yeah, it kind of feels like it's Oregon's to lose. You know, they've
I,
kind of just separated themselves kind of all year, really.
yeah, I think they're the most complete team, but
Yeah.
I don't think that they're like a runaway, like
No,
by far the
no,
best
but they've
team.
just been so goddamn consistent.
Yeah,
And but I Georgia's just got that puncher's chance. You know, they
that's.
just
I kind of feel like we're heading toward like a Oregon versus Texas, Georgia versus whichever one of those three teams. I think
those
Georgia.
poor teams.
Yeah, Georgia versus Notre Dame could be a little fun. I think it's gonna, from a hype perspective, it's gonna be like, whoa, Georgia, Notre Dame, and it's like, yeah, Notre Dame hasn't been relevant since forever.
the 80s.
Yeah, as
Like,
far as like competing on a national stage. But I think like Oregon, Georgia is kind of where we're going, and you can never ever count Georgia out with Kirby Smart and the amount of talent. So, um,
just an illegal amount of talent.
it's an illegal amount of talent. It's legal now, baby. Uh,
They're just too fast.
Shifting gears to the NFL and America's most favorite segment, Bolds and Scolds for week 14 of the NFL season. It is your week to go first with your bold.
Um, so I'm going to pick two players from that Thursday night game. Uh David Montgomery and Josh Jacobs both had some absolutely nasty pass protection reps in that game. Like truly putting their entire body on the line, and it was an absolute thing of beauty, and I don't know how they got up. You don't see a lot of, high profile running backs that will really give up their body that way to protect their quarterback, but like was monumental for both of those offenses.
I definitely thought you were about to pick two Lions. I was
No.
like, this man can't even contain himself anymore. Double Lion
No,
bold.
that was just something that jumped out to me during that game. I was like, man, like they're not even running the ball, and they're like I they're borderline dead. Like
Uh, my bold for week 14, because someone literally had to do this, is Josh Allen, the quarterback for the Buffalo
yeah.
Bills. So, first quarterback ever with 3 pass touchdowns and 3 rush touchdowns in one game. Breaks Michael Vick's fantasy football record for most points by a quarterback in a single game. Vick scored like just over 49 in that famous Monday Night Football game against the Washington Should Be Fighting Georges years ago. Josh Allen dropped 52 in standard scoring. So that's the new record. Awesome game by him, but the fact that he did this and they still lost feels so Bills to me. It was so Bills.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah. Who is your scold for week 14?
I'm gonna do this one just to kind of fuck you over, but I actually do believe it. Arthur Blank.
Yeah.
Buddy, we know full and well you forced your front office to go out and get Kirk Cousins, and it was a bad move. And I know you can get out of it a little early. It's gonna sting. That money's gonna be on the books for a few years, and Kirk Cousins looks like a bottom like 2 or 3 quarterback at this point. Like he cannot move. He can barely move his feet to hand the ball off on outside runs. Like I want to say they've been operating out of pistol at like a 45% rate just just to make it so that like the operation of their offense and him like getting the ball off in the run game is functional. Like this is why owners should not be directly involved in transactions because you don't know what the fuck you're doing. And
Yeah.
the dude tore his Achilles at an escalated age and he's cooked.
I heard a theory that they signed Kirk Cousins and then started like working him out and getting him in camp and all that stuff. And then we're like, oh shit. And they saw kind of what was coming. So they drafted Michael Penix because they're like, yeah, this was a mistake
Yeah.
of catastrophic proportions. My scold is in the same vein. And I think that we should probably just spend every week double scolding the Falcons from here until the end of the season. So I have no problem doing so. But my scold is Michael Penix Jr., the rookie backup quarterback for the Falcons, because it if you cannot usurp Kirk Cousins, you must be total ass. Like they must be seeing you in practice and being like, "Holy shit, both of these guys suck." Because like the Falcons are 0-4 in their last 4 games.
Mm-hmm.
And in those 4 games, Kirk Cousins has thrown no touchdowns and 8 interceptions. He became the first quarterback ever, not this past week, but the week before, first quarterback ever to have a game where he did not throw a single ball over 37 miles per hour. First ever. Think about that. Think about how many like noodle arm quarterbacks we've watched. Every single one of them has thrown at least one ball over 37 miles an hour.
I mean, that's why he's gotten picked off, is that it's just like literally hanging in the air.
Yeah. And yet, Michael Penix Jr. still cannot get on the field. And I say that like this is half joking to scold him. It was really just my way of scolding
Yeah.
Kirk Cousins. But I seriously, if we don't see Michael Penix like this week against the Raiders, I am seriously going to be concerned about his future prospects in this league. That they would rather just watch what's going on every week than start the rookie
Yeah.
with how good we've seen
It's
all the other rookie quarterbacks be this season, basically.
yeah. I mean, it from a stance of trying to win football games, it doesn't make any sense. It makes perfect sense from the standpoint of your owner made you make this move, and pride is one hell of a fucking drug. Uh, and he very likely is giving them a multiple choice question. The question is, who is your starting quarterback? And A is Kirk Cousins, B is Kirk Cousins, C is Kirk Cousins, and D is all of the above. Like,
Yeah. Well, this is the thing that's so interesting to me, though, is like from the pride perspective, though, it's like, so you've been getting torched all offseason and all season for drafting Michael Penix. Like, you would think that there would be some desire to put him on the field and show what he can do and stop getting torched for that. But
yeah,
now instead,
but
it's like people like me are looking at it and it's like, okay, is he not on the field because you're forcing Kirk Cousins down their throats, or can he not get on the field because the coaching staff is like, this is it? Both of these guys are a disaster. We need to see it. I really thought that they wanted to make the move to Penix last week, but like it was Kirk going back to Minnesota for the first time. So they're like, we're going to give him one more chance and see how it goes. And that they would make the move to Penix. I thought by the time we recorded this podcast this week, they would have made the move to Penix already.
yeah,
And I have not seen anything, and it's Wednesday.
well, and I mean, publicly, they stated that Kirk is still their quarterback after the game, which I get it. You're not going to like immediately after the game just throw the guy under the bus. I mean,
They
some of
should.
these, yeah, but like he may have earned it, but they're not going to do that. But like you you need to you need to start exploring that option. Like
Yeah.
that should have happened weeks ago.
No,
But
but like it's week 15. So we only have like what, 4 games left?
yeah,
3 games left?
they're not like yeah, they're not in the driver's seat anymore, but they're not out of this playoff race.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying is like you only have 3 games left and you just let Tampa Bay pass you because you've lost your last 4 games in a row. Now you have a soft landing spot for the rookie. You play the Raiders this weekend. I'm trying to find their schedule. So yeah, you play the Raiders, the Giants, then you're at Commanders, home for Panthers. So you got 4 games left. Like now is the time. We've seen enough of what we've needed to see for Kirk Cousins.
Yeah.
Like, do not lose to the Raiders this weekend. Do not. It's Monday Night Football. You cannot afford that. So no, I'm totally fine with you
Just,
picking Arthur Blank. I honestly I thought you were gonna pick D. Alford. For if anybody hasn't seen the D. Alford play,
oh my
I
God, that's incredibly
I was
earned as
watching a
well.
yeah, I was watching a view on TikTok that was just focused on him and just watched him the entire play, and it's the funniest fucking video I've ever seen in my life. I honestly was like laying in bed just like laughing hysterically, and Marley's like, "What are you laughing at?" And I was like, I can't. Every time I watch it, it gets funnier. I see something I didn't see on the last watch. It's
I'm just like trying to imagine it, and oh my God,
just
it's
anybody
priceless.
anybody that didn't see it, go
Oh my
YouTube
God.
D Alford, and I'm sure I'm gonna text it to my mom because my mom's gonna be like, I want to see it. Yeah. All right, gambling picks for week 15. We're already all the way at week 15. 4 games left for everybody. Everybody's had their bye now. Time for
Yarp.
fantasy. Time for fantasy playoffs.
I don't know what that is.
uh, so last
He
week
said with
actually
the third most points in the league.
sad. You should be in one of those leagues where instead of the 6 best team record wise getting the 6 seed, they gave it to whatever team had the most points. I heard that recently is like a big thing. Um, but I'm glad that we didn't because I'm the 3rd seed, and that means I'd be playing you. And the last time I played you didn't end well for me. So
I liked
fucking
it.
yeah, I know you did. You put up 170.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, Kevin put up 170 on me this past weekend. There's been 170 points scored twice in our league this year, and they were both against me. And meanwhile, I'm starting Will Levis because Lamar Jackson is on a bye, and I didn't bother to have a backup quarterback this season. So it's me and Will Levis versus 170 points from Kevin. You can imagine how that one went. And it still wasn't as bad as the last time I played you. So yeah, I'm perfectly fine with playing Giles this week and not you. Gambling picks last week. So last week, like, didn't look like it was going to be good until the very last play of Monday Night Football where Jamar Chase caught his second touchdown and we hit the long shot. So Lions did beat the Packers, but they pushed the -3. Jameson Williams did not get a touchdown, but somehow Tim Patrick had 2. The Bills lost to the Rams, like we mentioned. I had them by 3.5. Sea Chicken's money line did hit. And then, like I mentioned, Jamar Chase catches 2 touchdowns to cover the long shot bet on Monday Night Football. Getting a little dangerous with the long shot bets again. We're hit 2 out of the
Yeah.
last 3. Feeling good. Thursday this week is another banger. And again, this is how you can tell the NFL cares way more about Amazon than they care about ESPN and their broadcasting partners.
Yep.
Because Thursday Night Football is the Rams at the 49ers, which is pretty pivotal for the NFC West race now, which is, again, topsy-turvy with the Seahawks leading by 1 game over the Rams, 2 games over the 49ers, who are 1 game behind the Rams. Pretty critical. But that is on Thursday night on Amazon. And then they gave ABC and ESPN 2 Monday night games, and they both suck. They gave them Bears, Vikings, and Falcons, Raiders.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a week that has like banger games. Like you have the Bills and the Lions, and that's just
Mhm.
on at 4:30. And you have Green Bay and Seattle on Sunday Night Football, and they're like, yeah, fuck you,
And
ESPN.
the
You can
Lions are breaking out the black jerseys again.
ooh.
That would have been an ideal Sunday night
Yeah.
situation.
And they're like, here you go, ESPN. Here's Falcons Raiders. Have fun. Where are you going for Thursday Night Football? Rams at 49ers, or 49ers are favored by 3.
I'm between 2 right now.
I already wrote down one for you in the tracker, so I'm going to see if I get it right.
Well, the one that I think you already wrote down was the Rams money line plus
See.
124.
Yep.
Um, that's where I was originally going. I'm also considering taking the over
Hmm.
at 48 and a half. I like taking plus money when I can. And I can't look at San Fran after last year or last week going up against the Bears and being like, all right, they're back on track. So
Yeah.
and sometimes you just play the Bears.
So that was the one I wrote down for you. So it nailed that. I actually was going to take that one myself. And then I was like, that's probably where Matt's going to go. So I am taking an anytime TD for Puka Nakua, wide receiver for the Rams. That is plus 120. He beat Beaston
Yeah.
against Buffalo, 12 catches, 162 and a touchdown. He had a touchdown against New Orleans the week before. He had 9 for 117 against Philly, 7 for
That
123 against New England. Like he's been
Stafford
he's
really, really missed him when he was gone because when they both came back, like there's a clear favorite now.
and is not the one I expected.
Yeah. Which
No.
I mean, Cup is older. He might need more time to truly get back to
Yeah,
100%.
just call it what it
So,
is, man. Puka is better at the like Puka is better than Cooper Cup is at this point. He's just
yeah.
physically and like the catch he made where
Yeah.
Stafford dropped that ball in over his right shoulder on the sideline is fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
That guy has a fifth round pick. My team can't draft a wide receiver who can play in the second round, and the Rams got this guy in the fifth.
In fairness, the only reason he probably wasn't a first round pick was because he couldn't stay healthy. Like the dude's tape was
Insane.
dirty.
Yeah. I have
Just fucking dirty.
just makes me so mad. I have to sit here and watch Jalen Polk every week when the Rams are getting guys like this in the fifth. Uh, where are you going for the weekend? It's a good weekend of football, but I hate the slate for gambling. I hate it. The Ravens are favored by 16 at the Giants. I'm like, no, can't touch that.
Vegas has been on this with us because I want to just say David Montgomery anytime touchdown. But now, like that shit's consistently minus 160, minus 170, sometimes minus 180. Like,
Yeah.
let me
Him
see.
and Gibbs are both like minus 160, minus 170 every week to score.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of one. What does parlaying them look like?
Probably smart. The over under in that game is 54 and a half. Like
Yeah.
there's going to be some fireworks.
Yeah, parlaying them is plus 180. I think that might be my bet.
Okay. You got Jameer Gibbs and David Montgomery anytime touchdown parlay. It's plus 180. I'm going back to a tease. I started doing teases this year and I love them now. I hit one last week where I had
You're such a tease.
I know. I had Miami and Seattle in a tease last week and it hit. And I was like, oh, these are nice. So 6 point tease, the Browns versus Kansas City and the Bengals versus Tennessee. So it turns into Browns plus 10 against the Chiefs, who can't beat anybody by more than 3, and Bengals plus 1 at Tennessee. So I like that one. That's minus 120. Long shot bet of the week. You talked about Josh Jacobs already. We are going to take him to score 2 touchdowns against the Seattle Sea Chickens. That is plus 310. Josh Jacobs had 1 touchdown in his first, I think it's like his first 7 games with Green Bay, or it's like his first 6 games, he had 1 touchdown or 2
Yeah, he be
touchdowns.
he be feasting.
Yeah. In his last 6 games, he has 10 touchdowns. So he be feasting. I think that game's going to be pretty good and that he's going to get in a couple times, but we'll
Yeah.
see if we could stay hot with the long shots. But for now, that is it for us. As always, Foul Doc can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Gmail, foul.sports@gmail.com. You can find our videos on TikTok at Foul Sports Podcast. It is a long name, but you can't miss it. Unfortunately, the college football playoffs do not start until a week from Friday. However, if you're into bowl season like I am, and you are also a Western Michigan alumni, you can watch the Western Michigan Broncos in a bowl game this weekend, which the vast majority of people watching Western Michigan this season would not call it a success. But my goal for our football team every year is to make a bowl. And so I guess I have to call this season a success because we are playing in the very first bowl of bowl season, the Salute to Veterans Bowl. Southern Alabama favored by 7.5, and it's probably not enough. But we made it. But bowl season does start Saturday with Southern Alabama and Western Michigan, and then continues Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week. And then going into next week, uh, Friday night, 8 o'clock is Indiana at Notre Dame to start the college football playoff, the Battle of Indiana, two teams in the same state. And then Saturday, December 21st is just all the college football playoff games. That's a good day of football. But until then, you got plenty of NFL, NBA, NHL, college basketball is going, all sorts of stuff to watch. MLB hot stove season continues. Hoping to see my team add some more pieces. We made a big trade today, and we'll see what's to come. But all right, my friend. Talk to you soon.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye,
Bye, Robin.